Welcome back to the podcast. I'm joined today by Owen. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for reaching out, Josh.
No problem at all. So, just to give you a bit of context, I actually discovered Owen after a Facebook post that went out that we're going to talk to a little bit about today. But really, I just want to get to know you, hear a few of your stories, and he's going to tell us about a trip from England to Morocco.
Sounds great. Yeah.
So, tell us how it started, like sort of the initial idea, and then we can kind of get into what happened after.
So the initial idea was supposed to be very simple. I was going to leave the UK on bike. I've certainly done some bike excursions and expeditions in the past. So the idea was just sort of explore the world a little bit, cycle through France, cycle through Spain, hop on a ferry, cycle around Morocco, and for the winter time, and then come back to the UK afterwards. Now that's kind of the high level, simple plan. The context around how I arrived at that trip is much like everybody else in 2020. Something went wrong, and for me, when COVID hit, I was transitioning jobs. I was moving across to a job that was in tourism. So the job that I was moving to disappeared. Fortunately, the company that I worked for before put me on furlough. But at the time then that I was transitioning and moving jobs, I was also looking at buying property. But with COVID, furlough, and all the financial concerns that people were having and banks were having particularly, the banks introduced more stringent financial stress tests, which I didn't pass. So I actually had to pull out of the property purchase, which is a little bit of a kick in the pants. And then later on in the year, my landlord, I think he was a little bit concerned about whether or not I could pay rent going forward. And then because there were issues around whether or not people would be allowed to be evicted, I think he was a little bit concerned about losing money. And so he was just sort of, hey, can you hit the road? And so by the end of the year, I was jobless and homeless, and yeah. So I mean, in terms of options that were sitting there in front of me, I looked at the gamut that was available to me, and one of them that kind of was scratching at the back of my mind, which I couldn't get rid of, was just going for a bike ride. Everyone at the time, I was thinking, everyone's just waiting for this to pass, and while we're all waiting for it to pass, why not just wait for it to pass in a place like Morocco?
And that's how it all started. That simple idea to head over to a country a bit nicer to hang out, I suppose.
Well, the idea was because I've been here last February for a bike race. It's a race called the Atlas Mountain Race, and it was an off road race. Had a fantastic time. Really got a great opportunity to kind of explore the culture, see some incredible landscapes, and I met some friends who were Moroccan. They were riding in the race, or afterwards. Then there's a bike shop in Marrakesh where I started hanging out with some of the guys. So I had some kind of history here with Marrakesh, with Morocco. I knew that it was a cheaper place overall. So it's not difficult to live with accommodation on like 10 quid a day, um, as it is, and then yeah, I mean it's got great weather. So for me, it was those three variables. I had some history here around cycling, so I knew the cycling was really great. It's really cost effective, and I mean today was 26 degrees.
Sounds lovely. I mean, it's not been so bad in England today, but usually it's it's pretty horrendous. So with your adventure, and you're sort of coming up with this idea. I mean, was it pretty much you're out of the house and then you set straight off, or did you have a little bit of time to kind of prepare for it?
And I'm glad you said prepare, not plan, because I didn't really plan. But in terms of preparation, yeah. So again, with some of the cycling that I've done, I've been really fortunate and really lucky to have partnered with a couple of brands. I also write for a cycling magazine, an online cycling publication, and so I was kind of able to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm planning on doing this," and either partners or through the online publication, we were able to kind of get some kit and equipment together. So Rebel came out and they lent me a bike, CGR titanium frame bike. Was able to get then some Halo wheels, which are a dynamo wheel. And so there's a couple of brands that were a part of this whole trip. And so in terms of just getting all those different pieces of kit together so that I'd be ready to come and cycle, there was just a little bit of waiting time around that. So I think from moving out from my where I've been living to leaving was about 3 weeks, but I stayed with a friend across that 3 weeks.
So, had you done any touring before that sort of led to this, or was it fresh?
No, no, no. I'm not that foolish to do something quite so big without having done something before. So touring, I've done before, yeah. So 2016, I cycled around Ireland. 2018, I did John O'Groats Land's End, which led to writing, which led to doing the inaugural Transalba race in Scotland, which is a 1,000 mile bike race. And then again, 2020, I did the Atlas Mountain Race, which was a multi-day endurance race, 700 miles.
Okay, so you got you got a few decent challenges under your belt. So this doesn't seem sort of something that you're not capable of. So you set off during this time, and it's obviously a time when no one really knows what's going on, and Morocco seems much better. So what happens once you set off? How does it sort of begin?
Optimistically, I'll give you that much. I mean, the first day that I got out of Dieppe, so I took the ferry across from New Haven across to Dieppe, so the south of England across to northern France. And first day of cycling, got sunburned. Said, this is fantastic. What could go wrong here? And the idea had been cycled down all the way through to southern Spain to catch the ferry. 2 days into the trip, and somebody had emailed to say, "Hey, just to let you know, all the ferries between Spain and Morocco have been cancelled." And so I emailed all the companies, and sure enough, they had all been cancelled. And so I was looking at alternatives, found a ferry that went from southern France to Morocco. It was like 37 hours or something. And so I kind of boogied down to the southeastern France. It leaves from Sète, which is close to Marseille. And by the time that I got down to Sète, that ferry had been cancelled. And like cancelled almost kind of indefinitely. I don't think they're even running still, like 3 or 4 months later. And so, yeah, the idea of kind of cycling through France and cycling through Spain sort of disappeared. So instead, then I ended up having to fly. Now, the other thing that happened when I was in France is that second lockdown in France was announced, and so I had a couple of days where I was sort of I had to get from Sète across to Toulouse, which is where I flew out from, under lockdown because the ferry or the hostel where I've been staying as well closed its doors, so I didn't have any accommodation. So I had to cycle across to Toulouse as well, and then so I left October 22nd. I left the UK October 22nd, and then arrived in Marrakesh in Marrakesh, which is central Morocco, on November 6th.
Okay, and have you been there since?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I've been in Morocco since November 6th. Yeah, yeah. And I don't know what the future holds as it is. So December 20th, the Moroccan government has indefinitely ceased all flights between Morocco and the UK for obvious reasons, and so it's just sort of watching and waiting now as well to see on when travel is available back to the UK.
So I mean, what's it like in Morocco itself? Like, what's it kind of like being in a completely different country and sort of knowing that there's stuff going on in the UK, but you're not part of that?
Yeah. So yeah, so I left the UK at a time when there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of sort of optimism around people. It was right at the time when kind of the vaccination had been announced, and everyone was kind of thinking, rubbing their hands together. It's been a tough year for everybody, but here's the vaccination soon to be issued. Everyone can go back to normal once we hit the herd immunity. That was back in October. And so I kind of felt comfortable at that time of leaving. Again, there wasn't necessarily as much much of the difficulty around traveling as there is and has been for the last maybe 2 months or so. Particularly when that new virus and the new strain was discovered in the UK. Now, the Morocco in the context then for Morocco relative to the UK is significantly different. And like sympathies to everybody who's in in the UK between the numbers that are kind of being posted every day, as well as then the impact on everyone's lives and what it means for lockdown and just sort of general stress on not knowing really what the future is going to be holding. And I had a look today at the numbers. So the UK, I mean, has gotten very much on top of the numbers. A couple of weeks ago, it was almost 30,000 a day, whereas now it's around 10,000 a day. New cases are being confirmed. But in Morocco, it's 300 cases a day are being confirmed. So in terms of atmosphere and in terms of people's behavior and everything, it's a lot more relaxed. I guess because maybe some of the more contagious strains haven't reached Morocco, and Morocco then has like it's shut itself off from the rest of the world by and large. So what's here is kind of what's here, and again, the case numbers are very very low.
So does it give you opportunity to move around in Morocco? Have you done any exploring since you've been there?
I almost haven't stopped. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been around, and it's been fantastic in that sense too. Um, so was going around on the bike, kind of willy nilly almost. Whether it was somebody had said, "Hey, you might want to go and check this place out," or sort of a little bit of research and stuff that I had done. So yeah, I've been all over the country as it is. Almost down to the desert. I got as far down to the desert as what's called the gateway to the desert, which is really cool. And then all the way up to the north, up to Tangier, and sort of all points and every place is in between.
So is there any like places that really stick with you since you've been there?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know what it is that you know about Morocco, or even then anyone who's listening, what they know about Morocco. And what's been absolutely fantastic is kind of the variance and variability of the landscape. Um, and it was something that I kind of saw in February when I was here again for the bike race last February in 2020, and then also you kind of see more and more again, getting as much opportunity to travel around as much as I have been. So you know there is the desert, which a lot of people associate with Morocco, and there's camels and everything. But you know there's actually a ski resort here in Morocco. Um, there's 4 different mountain ranges that are here in Morocco, and like, the scenery for them is stunning, absolutely incredible. Beautiful forests as well, particularly up in the north. A lot of really lush greenery, and then of course you've got the coast. And Morocco's fishing industry is really, really good. It's one of the biggest contributors to its overall GDP. So you know you rock up on the beach after a day's cycle, and you know you get like a fish tagine, or you get some sort of barbecued sardines or something. And yeah, different things along those lines are absolutely incredible. Again, that it's the variance I think in landscapes that really makes an impact.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's a place that's appealed to me for a long time, mainly just by reading about it. I've never actually seen any photos or anything. But even sort of like the lifestyle that you describe and sort of the day to day aspects sound very interesting as well.
It's incredible, and then not having uh, like the obligation of making money or anything. It's pretty much just, or even then having to find accommodation because I've come with a tent, so I'm not necessarily tied or under any sort of schedule. And so you can get up, hop on the bike, go for a bike ride, um, and it can be as simple as there's one particular instance I stopped. I was up in the mountains and I was looking at Google Maps because I was at a crossroads. Do I go left? Do I go right? And in the span of time, it took me to pull up my phone, open Google Maps, and find out where I was and find out which direction I needed to go. Somebody had come up and started to talk to me. So we had a quick little bit of a chat. And then it's kind of getting towards the end of the day. I was kind of thinking, you know, it might be good to find a place to either camp or like a guest house or something. So I'd asked this guy, "Hey, do you know if there's like a hotel or a guest house nearby?" And he's just come stay with me. Literally, I've been talking to this guy for 5 minutes, and he said, "Just come stay with me. I just live up here. We'll give you some food. You can sleep over for the night, and then carry on your way as it is." I'm still in touch with the guy. I'm still friends with the guy. So yeah, like lifestyle here is completely like my lifestyle compared to what it was in the UK. Not having a 9 to 5 and everything is completely different. But then people's orientation here is completely different too. One of the things that Morocco is really renowned for is its openness and hospitality, which pretty much experience almost every day.
So it's interesting, you talk about this sort of this kindness from strangers and stuff you're experiencing, being able to sort of head off anywhere with the tent. I mean, so what's the reason for coming back to England? Do you ever think you want to carry on your journey once things open, or do you want to return and sort of restore your life, as it were?
The restoration of life would be a fantastic project, yeah, as it is. So, yeah, I had always intended to come back to the UK. Again, this was sort of a stopgap, in a sense. Everyone is waiting, and unfortunately, it seems that everyone's waiting just a little bit more as it is. And again, like in the UK, there's been even more sacrifices, and it seems to be a very stressful environment, and understandably so. But it's a waiting game for everybody, and yeah. So when there's the opportunity to come back to the UK, whenever flights reopen again, and whenever I guess the world says that the UK is a safe place to travel into out of, yes, I'd like to come back to the UK. I'd like to pick up the pieces and carry on once again with life. For this, though, my intention had been to write a book. Um, it's again, there's been some incredible people, incredible landscapes, incredible experiences overall. So my intention had been to kind of write a book and kind of share that with people from the UK or anybody else who might be interested in alternative lives or different cultures or even then cycling itself.
So this is interesting. The idea of writing about your journey. Is there any stories that really stick with you from your trip? Obviously, it didn't quite go to plan, but it's always sort of adds to how interesting it is.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's gone to plan, which is the funny part of the whole thing. And yeah, there's little quirky things that kind of stick out as it is, or just generally. I've been, I think, traveling for 3 or 4 months now, and there's always something quirky going on. I was telling somebody the other day that trip from Santa Cross to Toulouse. It got quite dark one of the evenings, and I didn't really feel comfortable cycling anymore, and it was just too dark. So I stopped and I set up a tent for the evening, went to bed. I kind of think everything's all right. I found a very nice camp spot on the side of the road, just in farmer's field. And middle of the night, I woke up, and there was something snuffling around the outside of the tent. And I wasn't really paying very much attention. I just sort of woke up a little bit dazed, and I was, oh, it's just a bore, no big deal. Kind of rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. And then woke up a little bit more and I was, wait a second, that's a boar. That's a wild boar. And boars are actually notorious for being very vicious. And I had apples and apple juice in the tent. And I was, these are things that sniff out truffles a couple of feet under the ground. This thing's definitely going to be able to smell the apples that's in here. And pigs love apples. And I was, oh no, what's going to happen here? Little things along those lines. Uh, there's a chap here, or there's a chap, excuse me, in the UK. He published a couple of things that I did an Everesting. I don't know if you know what that is, but I did an Everesting in September back in the UK and raised money for Surfers Against Sewage. And so this guy who has a magazine published a few bits on the endeavor as well as then why I was doing it, which was to raise money again for charity. And so we've been in touch ever since. I told him that I was here in Morocco, and he said, "Oh, no way." He also has a marketing company, I think, and he said, "You know what? We've actually got a client. They run a boutique hotel, and they have a hotel in Morocco. Do you want me to see if you can go stay?" So, I mean, a boutique hotel, sure. Let's do it. So it ended up that yes, he arranged for me to go and stay at this lovely hotel for 2 nights. They put me in a lovely suite, which is about £2,500 a night. So I would have cost me £5,000 to stay there. Got to do that absolutely free. And again, I mean, I rocked up, and I don't have very much kit. And when you're on the road, it's not always very easy to maintain that same level of hygiene that you might elsewhere. So here it was, it was diametrically opposed. I hadn't had a haircut in months. I haven't shaved in months. My beard is as it's down to my ankles at this point in time, and I showed up at a hotel that is very, very luxury, looking as though I was homeless. So there's lots of little things that kind of have happened along the road, that have all been unexpected, unplanned for, um, a bit fun, sometimes a bit sort of I wish that didn't happen. I was here for 4 days. The first 4 days I was here, and as you do, I didn't really know Marrakesh. Went to the wrong part of town, got my phone stolen. Yeah, so there's lots of little things that have happened.
So yeah, so it's interesting. There's always going to be these sort of like moments that are good and bad, and I think that's the interesting thing about being on the road when you suddenly get thrown in a situation where you're living in luxury when you didn't expect it, but also you're also there sort of in situations where things go wrong as well. So I want to talk about one thing in particular, which we knew we were going to come to at some point. So let's talk about the Facebook posts because that was sort of how I found out about you. What was the issue there? What sort of happened? And obviously that's quite local to me, so I find it very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So what I've been doing is because again I am very keen on writing a book and sharing the experiences. So typically what I do is just jump in and not only is it self promotional, but there is a part of me that does actually want to share experiences with people to see give them an opportunity, I guess, to kind of forget about some of the issues that are going on in the UK, and there's other things going on kind of in the world that will either make them think about alternatives for themselves or just break up their day from the 24-hour news cycle of COVID. So what I've been doing is jumping into different Facebook groups and sort of just trying to engage with people, saying, "Hey, I'm down here in Morocco, cycling around. If you want to see some pictures or if you want to hear some stories, follow me on Instagram." And by and large, the feedback is great. And building out the Instagram following and getting lots of positive messages from people just saying yes that it's helping them kind of forget about what's going on here, uh, except for one post, the aforementioned post into the community group for Godolphin. And I put it up, kind of went to sleep, didn't think about it because usually what I do is go back the next day then and address any sort of comments. Woke up the next day and my goodness, something's going completely wrong here. I think there's about 200 posts on the page, and maybe about 45% of those posts are incredibly negative. To the point where actually one of them was along the lines of, I hope somebody close to this person gets COVID and dies, so they can see how much it's affecting people." And yeah, that was an interesting one. Um, so the and I what I tried to do then was put myself in the people who were posting, put myself in their position, put myself in their shoes, and to a certain extent, I mean, I very much understand. Um, it's a very serious thing that's going on in the UK, and it has put a lot of pressure on people. I mean, between uncertainty around their jobs, financial uncertainty, as well as then being in lockdown and what's going on in the future, as well as the increasing numbers and increasing numbers of fatalities because of the disease. So I understand to a certain extent what it is that's happening and where the feedback came from, um, and sort of yes, there seems to be a tremendous amount of anger, as well as then it was a little bit of an opportunity for people to vent. Um, but the other part of it was I think people didn't they made assumptions rather than looking at kind of that historical context of when I left, it was an entirely different scenario in the UK. And again, there was a tremendous amount of optimism in the UK at that point in time, as well as then the sort of comparative context, which is numbers. Again, that there's 300 cases a day that's being announced here in Morocco. So the amount of freedom that's here is certainly a lot different to what it is in the UK.
Well, I think I think it's holding on to that idea that through your trips and your adventures, you can actually sort of brighten people's days. You know, you can break up that sort of endless cycle of stuff that's coming through for people. I think that's something that, you know, you should be able to hold on to, hopefully.
I mean, and one of the things I kind of thought was, have I missed the pulse here? Have I just completely lost track of what's going on in the UK, and have I actually overstepped my boundaries here by making this post? But what I typically do is jump into maybe 3 or 4 groups a week and just kind of drop in a couple of posts and try and engage with people. And again, that one post to that community board is the only one that week, and the only one since, and the only one really of all that had such negative feedback. So I am, yeah, I do think people do still appreciate that disruption to that 24-hour news cycle. The idea that somebody's traveling and they can put themselves, hopefully, in my shoes and either live vicariously through the trip, or alternatively, think about when it is that they can travel too, and think about where they want to go and what they want to do, and what their life is going to look like once there's a much more kind of stability in the world.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think it's an important thing because it's almost like people tend to forget, and people sort of, you know, feel like it's dragging on, and sort of they're worried about whether they'll be able to travel again. And I think even being able to, whether it's, you know, hearing your stories or through photos, I think it could actually be quite helpful for people. Yeah, and I obviously, you know, I really enjoy listening to your story, and I hope that at some point I can travel again, and Morocco would definitely be on my list.
I hope you can travel too, and I hope that everybody is trying to stay balanced or is managing to stay balanced. I know things are very difficult. There's a lot of mixed messages coming out in the UK from the government and then from news and media outlets. But I've been trying to follow what's going on in the news and everything. And I know then obviously it's winter time in the UK, so I do have everyone in mind around what's going on, and sympathies to everybody. It's not a particularly easy time for anybody, but then when you're in lockdown and when you're in the winter, it can't be much easier. But yeah, I certainly hope that you can travel, and I certainly hope everyone else can travel too. And places like Morocco are on everyone's little wish list as it is. And certainly, my experience has been people are absolutely fantastic. It's so easy just to jump in and drop into all these little different communities and just have some of the best experiences ever. The food here is absolutely incredible. The produce that's grown here in this country is just so flavorful. Everyone loves food as well here, so the preparation around food is incredible. And then landscape and weather-wise, again, it's been mid 20s. I've been here a couple of months, and it's still not infrequent that I have to put sun cream on, as it is. So it's a fantastic place overall.
So I really hope you enjoy the rest of your time there. It sounds lovely. Unfortunately, we are coming to the end of the podcast, kind of like running out of time for some more stories. But if you do release a book, I would love an opportunity to read it. And I think anyone else that's listening, hopefully, if there's any local people listening, it will give you the opportunity to tell this story in a better way. If anyone that was looking at this post and thinking badly on it, please have a wonderful time. And if you want the opportunity to sort of give people any links or your Instagram or website, this is the perfect time.
Terrific, thank you. So the Instagram, and that's my primary platform, is Stories from a Man and His Bike. Believe it or not, and again, it's stories from me as I travel around. So Stories from a Man and His Bike on Instagram, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, the opportunity to share a few more stories through Instagram or through a book, or even just another appearance in on the podcast. All of it will be embraced. All of it will be welcomed, and I hope people enjoy.
Thank you very much for coming on. See you later.
All the best to yourself, and sending sunshine to everybody. Thanks, Josh.